At 27,600 feet on Mount Everest's north face, the air is so thin, it feels like breathing through wet silk. It's where the mountain starts claiming lives, and where I first noticed I wasn't alone. I was following the same route where George Mallory and Sandy Irvine had vanished in 1924 on their expedition to be the first to summit the world's tallest mountain. The obsession that had claimed their lives now drove me forward. 9 years had passed since they disappeared, but their presence still haunted these heights. Following their final route, I could almost hear Mallory's voice in the thin air. The struggle is the struggle of life itself. Upward, and forever upward. My crampons bit into blue ice, as old as human history. Each step sent crystalline echoes across the face. Crack, crunch, pause. Crack, crunch, pause. The familiar rhythm had become my heartbeat over the past 2 days of climbing. Focus, Frank, I muttered to myself. A habit learned from too many solo climbs. One step at a time. The thin air made even whispers feel like shouts. That's when I heard it. A fourth beat, like footsteps matching mine. The temperature plummeted so rapidly my eyelashes frosted mid-blink. Years of alpine experience had taught me to trust my instincts. This wasn't just the familiar third man effect we climbers know, but something else. Something watching. I paused to check my oxygen flow, my hand shaking more than the cold justified. Altitude sickness, I said aloud, trying to convince myself. Nothing more. Yet I found myself reaching for my Kendall mint cake, breaking off a piece to share, and extending it to my right, where I knew with inexplicable certainty something was waiting to accept it. The presence remained with me as I continued upward. I thought back to my years in the Alps, guiding climbers over ice and rock, and the rigorous training I'd endured in the Scottish Highlands. I'd survived storms and avalanches, braved blizzards in the Lake District, but nothing had prepared me for this. My oxygen-starved mind screamed for me to turn back, to run. But at this altitude, a reckless move could mean death. Yet it wasn't threatening, not yet. It felt like something older than the mountain itself, watching with an ancient, unyielding patience. I remember pausing to rest, my ice axe biting into the frozen slope, when I noticed the first set of tracks. They weren't human footprints, that much I'm certain of. They appeared suddenly in the snow beside me, as if something had simply materialized there. The impressions were round, with faint geometric patterns, about the size of dinner plates, with no clear direction. They simply appeared and disappeared, as if whatever made them could slip in and out of our world at will. Bloody hell, I breathed, my voice forming ice crystals in the thin air. What are you? As if in answer, I saw them. 2 dark objects, hovering above the northeast shoulder of the mountain. In my official account of the Royal Geographic Society, I described them as resembling military kite balloons, but that was a lie, and to preserve my academic reputation. What I actually saw were creatures that defied any natural classification. One possessed what I first took for wings, but they moved wrong, rippling and folding through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The other had a protuberance like a beak, but it seemed more like a sensory organ that turned to track my movement. They pulsated with a rhythm that I now believe was some form of communication. I forced myself to look away, naming distant peaks aloud to test my sanity. Cho-Oyu, Gyeochun-Kong, Pumori, the Rongbuk Glacier. My voice shook, but the exercise helped ground me. Yet each time my gaze returned, there remained, studying me with an intelligence that felt impossibly ancient. Their presence stayed with me as I continued across those treacherous slabs. The route took me past where another climber had found Mallory's ice axe just 2 days before. The discovery was still fresh in everyone's minds at Camp 6. As I approached the spot, I found something else. Something I've never reported. Beside it were strange markings in the rock. Geometric patterns that seemed to have been burned or etched into the stone. They reminded me of the patterns frost makes on a window, but these were deliberate, mathematical. I inched closer, my crampons scraping on the glassy rock. Each step required perfect balance. A single slip meant a 7,000-foot fall. The pattern seemed to shift under my gaze, pulling me forward until I caught myself leaning out over the abyss. My rational mind screamed to retreat, but those burning geometries promised answers about Mallory and Irvin's fate. As I examined these markings, the pulsating creatures descended lower, their movements becoming more agitated. The presence I'd felt earlier returned, but this time it wasn't solitary. I was surrounded by unseen watchers. The thin air at that altitude carries little sound, yet I heard something. Not with my ears, but with my mind. A low frequency resonated through my ice axe and into my bones, filling me with a primal certainty. I was being offered something. An invitation to step beyond the known, to trade safety for secrets no human should possess. The same choice, I now believe, extended to Mallory and Irvin 9 years earlier. I hesitated. The final sighting of Mallory and Irvin by the 1924 expedition's photographer flashed through my mind. 2 black dots ascending the northeast ridge at 12:50 p.m., moving strongly before the clouds rolled in. What had they discovered in those final moments? The sudden mist that enveloped me wasn't natural. It formed too quickly and moved with purpose. Through it, I caught glimpses of what appeared to be doorways in the air, opening into vistas beneath strange stars that couldn't exist on Earth. A storm struck without warning, a sudden wall of ice and wind ripping through the thin air, with a fury that felt deliberate. It was as if the mountain itself had decided to erase my presence, just as it had for Mallory and Irvin. When a catastrophic drop in barometric pressure created what meteorologists would later call an invisible death trap. Disoriented and barely aware of my direction, I fled downward. The presence followed, and with it came understanding. Mallory and Irvin hadn't simply disappeared in bad weather. They'd found something up there. Something that had been waiting on the mountain since before humans first looked up at its peak. I survived, of course. Made it down to tell the tale. But survival came with a price. The night after my descent, I developed my photographs from the climb. Most showed exactly what you'd expect. Ice, rock, the endless white of the north face. But the last frame captured something else. In the corner, barely visible against the pale sky, a familiar geometric pattern pulsed across my negative. The same pattern I'd seen etched into the rock near Mallory's ice axe. I burned that photograph immediately. Some things aren't meant to be shared. Last week, I received a letter from the Alpine Club. They're planning another expedition to search for Mallory, Irvin, and their VPK camera, hoping to finally prove they summited the mountain in 1924. They've asked me to join as a technical advisor, citing my experience on the North Face. I drafted 7 different replies before settling on a simple no, because I know what they'll find up there. Or rather, what will find them. The watchers of Everest are patient. They've had millennia to perfect their methods, and they're still waiting for the next climber who stops to study those strange geometric patterns in the rock, who pauses just a moment too long when that familiar presence settles beside them. Sometimes at night, I still hear that low frequency humming in my bones, and I wonder, did Mallory and Irvin accept the invitation I refused, or was it never a choice at all? Thank you for watching this Dark 5 story. Let me know what you think, and if you want to hear more. Click the link on screen or in the description to watch my video about the real history that inspired this story.